I realized several days in a row death toll per day in Italy was over 400 people. Serious, when did COVID-19 get real for you? I have worked in investigations/security for 8 years and was always told we can never work from home. The reason being we have access to millions of individuals' sensitive data and they didn't want to risk it being stolen. 2 weeks ago they bought hundreds of laptops and sent us all home to work. Today, when the government announced they're going to start putting the dead in a skating rink inside a local shopping mall because the local funeral homes don't have any more capacity. My aunt is one of the 100 people that have died in the last 24 hours in the US. She was like a mother to me growing up and I feel like my childhood just died with her. This is the first death in my life that has me confronting the realities of losing someone close to you. I was planning on going to visit her not too long ago, but the developing concerns over COVID-19 kept me from doing so because she was already very sick. My cautious nature was to no avail because it still killed her. I could have seen her, but I didn't because I was concerned about something that happened anyways. This morning it got very, very real for me. At my college, we probably won't even get graduation. Just a document in the mail. We also had no time for proper goodbyes and a large portion of the student body is international, out of state, etc. I don't know when the next time I'll see my best friend again is. I've honestly been crying, or at least in a very volatile mood the past couple of weeks, because this has completely destroyed my entire social life, one which I assumed I had until May, with zero closure or clear communication from the admin of my college. I wasn't ready for this. I don't have high school friends. College is the first time and place I found my true friends and true social life. I was living with 2 of my best friends in a very nice dorm. Now I'm couch crashing at my mom's and literally sleeping with the dogs. My cousin got sick, was admitted to the ICU, and tested positive for it. He's been out of the hospital for a few days but hasn't really improved, he just hasn't gotten worse. I texted with him a bit and it's still really serious, he has asthma as well. I guess it was only a matter of time before it affected somebody I know. When my colleague died. She was the first COVID-19 death in our state. I had seen her a few weeks ago and she was doing great, and then I received a company-wide email that she had passed. I had a bit of an existential panic last weekend as my job is considered essential and had gone to the grocery store for regular shopping and seen how panicky it all was. My husband works in a school, so he had already been told he would be not working for 2 weeks at a minimum, but it didn't really hit me how real it all was until I was at the store and saw things just gone. I had a vacation pre-planned for this week, so I feel much better this week than last since I am home. But I don't know how I'll feel next week when I go back. When I realized I might/should not be able to go home and see my elderly parents, one of which recently got diagnosed with cancer. My girlfriend is a wildlife virologist. When she started constantly reading articles during her free time, maybe mid-February or so, I realized it was the real deal. When cases popped up a few miles from my elderly, immune-compromised father's home, I started being truly scared for him and others. Wednesday, March the 11th. I'm a teacher and that was the first day that we had a meeting about the extremely unlikely odds that we would miss school. By Thursday, we knew that we would be out, but we figured that it would be the week after spring break. On Friday, we knew that we weren't coming back for at least 3 weeks. Now, I doubt we go back to next year. When colleges and K-12 schools closed. That's not a light decision and the people making those calls are very educated. I immediately knew things were about to hit the fan. Honestly, when the death toll in China surpassed SARS. I'm kind of an anxious person anyway, but infectious diseases have always scared me because there's no real control over who lives and dies. Other than my sister, my immediate family acted like I was crazy and overreacting. When I told my friend that I had been buying a little extra each grocery trip, she thought I was being ridiculous. She's a nurse and recently told me how real it is to her now. We own a small business. 3 days ago the government ordered us to shut down. We had to let go of all of our employees, including 3 senior citizens who depended on their checks for their livelihood. We have some savings but not nearly enough to continue to live and maintain the business afloat. The state is not offering enough help to us. We are really in a tough situation. Our employees are also in the same boat. We have a 30-year-old employee who has nobody. She lives by herself and most likely will get evicted, as her landlord is an asshole. Her situation is desperate. This is so sad and so crazy. All of our hard work is going down the drain in 3 weeks. My first shift at the hospital after 9 days off and seeing how absolutely unprepared we were to deal with what's coming. For example, 2 nurses were allowed to come back to work after flying home from a cruise, in early March. They pulled both of them and sent them into quarantine, but not until they received a call from the cruise line that 2 passengers so far had tested positive. There were at least 2 people on our unit who were like 99% confirmed. They just hadn't been tested because neither met the criteria for testing in this state, having left the country recently or directly knowing someone who had. And now I'm in the middle of another 9 days stretch off, having had what feel like a chest cold for going on 3 or 4 days now. Knowing I need to check in for a virtual health consult and wondering if they'll be footing the bill if I'm told to take 2 weeks off. When my thesis defense was forced to be live streamed from my apartment in just a single day's notice. Luckily the connection was great, the audience was small, and I was able to not wear pants. Oh, also, luckily I passed it to Lamau. About a month or so ago, when my hospital converted a ward into a negative pressure unit in anticipation of our first patient from one of the cruise ships. We're still changing related procedures and protocols almost daily and prepping other wards to accept patients with pending tests. When I realized that if my mother, who is 70 but generally healthy, falls ill, I can't get to her because that would involve air travel. When I was on Nextdoor and saw that people are posting which grocery stores have food. I wasn't blind to anything, I was taking it seriously and all. But that was the moment where I realized, holy shit. We are currently in a world where people have to post which grocery stores have food. When the Chinese government was snatching people off the streets who refused to self-isolate while they were sick. That was real enough for me to know this was serious. One of my close friends, late 30s, and his sister, a few years younger, live in Manhattan and are both recovering. They had a fever and felt off for a couple of days, but nothing too debilitating. Mostly headaches. They both feel fine now, except my friend has temporarily lost his sense of taste and smell. I know every situation is different, but not every story is a scary one. I hope this brings a little comfort. When I found out the virus can trigger cytokine explosions in your body. I have an overactive immune system that keeps trying to kill my lymph nodes. That's a quick and very agonizing death for me if I get it. Along with necessary steps, trying to stay away from people in the house, extra attention to washing hands and such, perhaps try to limit intake of coronavirus news to once or twice a day. I started feeling sick on Friday, self-quarantined as much as I could, have 4 kids and a wife here as well. My symptoms are low-grade fever, coughing, sometimes dry, sometimes wet, fatigue and heaviness in the chest. A little shortness of breath when I exert myself, decided to clean the bathroom I use and get some boxes down from the closet. Still, mostly fine, but I do find myself getting sicker the more I read about the virus. The shortness of breath feels much more prevalent, even when resting. Then headaches, racing pulse, etc. I don't even know for sure if I have a cold, flu or if it's COVID, but I do know when I consume hours of articles and anecdotes about the virus my symptoms seem to spiral downwards, likely due to anxiety. I started limiting my consumption of updates to stay informed but not to obsess. And instead focused more on movies and video games. After all, WTF is there to be done anyway beyond what I'm already doing? And I still feel sick, but no longer feel like I should maybe go to the ER, knock on wood. My wife knows my symptoms and we're absolutely prepared for me to go if things got worse. But, I'd much rather ride this out at home than stress myself into a hospital visit. Especially being that there are people out there who might need that bed. My dad has it, I just found out today. I'm 1,700 km away and is afraid I'm never going to see him again. It's been real for me since hearing about Italy locking down because I've been in shortage situations before, namely Hurricane Katrina. But it got really real when I found out the guy across from me tested positive. And I was on the elevator with him last Monday. So that kinda blows. He's fine, thankfully, just in self-quarantine. But now with the pollen coming out and all, every little sniffle and scratch I feel in my throat has me convinced I'm getting the damn thing. Oh man, back when it was only in China and we saw those fucking videos. But of course, that was way too early for anyone else to believe me. My parents still went to Mexico and were lucky to get back unaffected. I laid awake last night unable to sleep because I realized my brother, his girlfriend, or I could be carrying the virus. We're all home because courses have gone online and with parents. Both my parents are older and one is immunocompromised. If either of them got the virus, it could kill them. When my dad told me I won't stop you from leaving the house, but just remember the choices that each of us makes are going to affect our entire family from now on. As bored as I am in social isolation, I just can't risk my family's health. As soon as China locked down half their country, about 10% of Earth's population, China doesn't exactly treat their people the best and cares first and foremost about advancing their own nation's power and global standing above all else. The fact they readily gutted their own economy showed me one key thing: this terrified them to an unprecedented degree. I'm sure their death tolls and infection rate is far above what they claimed. I knew at that moment this is no joke and was going to spread globally. I lost my job, had to move back home from another country, and I am not able to see my friends or my family. Trying to work out a 3-month plan that isn't moving hotel rooms for 90 days and burning my savings. Mild compared to the awful experience others have had, but it's a million miles away from where I thought life was going 10 days ago. When my company actually started making plans to work from home, we had been staunchly against it forever, usually requiring a disability and lots of approvals from the higher-ups to have a chance. I remember when they had us start filling out the approval forms just for record-keeping purposes, and they said don't complete the last 2 pages, everything is auto-approved so we don't need admin signatures. I work in a boarding school with a lot of international students. It got real around when Madrid announced they were closing the airports. There was a panic packing where we shoved everything the Spanish kids owned into suitcases and put them on the last flight back home. And then it happened again with the Danish kids. Then Kazakhstani, Ukraine, Germany, France. When the school officially got closed on Friday, we had 25 out of our 145 students, and 12 of our 55 staff members, left in the building. As of today, the UK is in lockdown. So now it's really real. It came in shifts for me. The first time was when I saw the toilet paper all emptied out. The second time was when I read a post on social media from someone in Italy about what things are like in the hospitals, and how America needs to take this more seriously. I was already taking it seriously and trying to prepare, without taking more supplies than I needed. But that post made me realize how unprepared my country is for a serious epidemic. Everybody was still going to work, school, partying, etc. because they didn't think it would get bad here. A third time, nothing specific really happened. A few days after my office got us all working from home, it just kind of sunk in that this is going to last a lot longer than most Americans initially anticipated. Maybe because I kept seeing posts from my friends and family who are nurses about how hospitals are running out of masks and other protective gear. And running out of COVID-19 tests. People are still being optimistic and downright dismissive in my town. They think people are overreacting. They insist on continuing to live my life as normal, a quote from someone on a Facebook post sharing a link to my town's orders to stay at home. They think the government is just trying to control them, and they can't accept that this is too little, too late effort to stop asymptomatic people from spreading the virus to people who are more vulnerable to it. It's fucking terrifying how many people still don't care. I think that's what's made it the most real for me, is knowing that people aren't doing enough and this is going to spread rapidly as a result. When China locked down, Chinese society has been evolving for thousands of years. We don't agree with the government, but the people are innocent. When they stop, they aren't playing. The moment I realized several days in a row death toll per day in Italy was over 400 people. It hit me pretty hard knowing we're not really testing well either, and there are a lot of old people where I live. I am studying rescue services, and it contains a lot about crisis management, rescue systems, cops/firefighter EMTs. I have a lot of friends in the local Red Cross and some are EMTs, and I know a few people who work in healthcare. I'm pretty sure shit is only going to get real and we're not even close to being prepared. French here. My mother works at the hospital, and until 2 weeks ago, she only thought of it as a big case of flu. I was kinda worrying. I ride the train and the sub each day to go to work, but she was really reassuring. I was worrying because it is my first adult pandemic. I was only 16 when H1N1 happened. Then, Wednesday of the week before, she called me. In her hospital, 3 wings had been closed to leave beds vacant in order to anticipate the sick people. 2 of her colleagues had it, including her direct chef. All of the vacations she had taken for April were deleted and were requisitioned to work. She told me to stop taking the train, work from home, and stay away from people. That if I ever catch it, it could be possible that the hospital wouldn't have enough place. And that they can't have masks. When the president called for the confinement, be sure I respected it with absolutely no condition. I know I will be safe, I have enough food and TP at home, and I have plenty of things to do, work, read, play. But my parents? They have been both heavy smokers for 40 plus years, mom is 60, dad is 59, and my mom is in the first lines. I am not ready for this. As HR in a grocery store, when I sent home 20 people in 3 days for various symptoms, and then was yelled at and berated by any employee who was stressed out. I had to close my door, cry for a few minutes, then open it back up to make sure my staff had someone to come talk to when they were scared, which was all day long for about a week. It was one of the hardest days of my career to hold my shit together while everyone else was falling apart. When it was still only in China, and thanks to Reddit and Medcram, was aware of how contagious it was, then found myself talking to a coworker who had just come back from China. Me, so did you get tested? CW, no. They quarantined me for 14 days, then let us go when I didn't show symptoms. Me, knowing that some people didn't show symptoms, but can still be contagious. Oh. They really didn't test you? Crazy. Went to the bathroom to wash my hands and face right after, but I guess it was too late. Shared food area didn't help. Me, about 5 days later, coughing like crazy, calling out sick, and going into what has now been a 5-week self-quarantine where I still have yet to be tested because the guy was not known to be infected, I hadn't traveled, and I didn't have a fever. I'm not fully recovered yet, but much better. I've lost interest in being friends with some of the people who were irresponsible with the whole "it's hype" thing, even though I was sharing information about the seriousness of it all, being fully aware that it had to be spreading like crazy already. Thank you for watching Reddit Space. Please subscribe if you love these Reddit stories.